So good morning from the bustling metropolis of Parkes, Australia. Where is that? Yeah, exactly. Cool thing about this road trip that my brother has organised is I'm going to places that I've literally never heard of. Yesterday we drove from Canberra, which to be fair, I've heard of Canberra, to Yass, to Cowra, and now to Parkes. It's pretty cool. It's about 6 or 7 hours inland from Sydney. Nice little town. Went to a pub last night that was about as good as a Wetherspoons. This train station, by the way, gets 2 trains a week. One on Monday going that way and one on Tuesday going that way. It's nice to see that some towns in Australia have worse public transit than we have in America. Today's plan, we're hitting the road and we're heading to Dubbo. I have to say, Australia has the best sounding place names. So, heading to Dubbo. I'm not sure what's there. I think it's the home of the Royal Flying Doctor Service, so we might see some planes and stuff, so that'd be kind of cool. But I'm looking forward to another few hours on the Australian roads, checking out the outback. Interesting point about Australian roads. I sat in the back of the car for 120 kilometres between Yass and Cowra, and in that time, bouncing so much, I got 2,000 steps on my smartwatch. This is the kind of exercise I can get behind. Anyway, the sun is rising. I'm going to go back to the hotel, wake everyone else up, and let's hit the road. See you in Dubbo. This is genuinely such a cute little main street. So as far as I can tell, the only connection that Parkes has to Elvis is that somebody who lived here really liked Elvis. So they decided to start a music festival and a museum. Still, I'm not sure if this lack of any actual Elvis connection is worse than Prestwick Airport, which has the claim to fame of being the only place that Elvis ever went to Britain, because he stepped off the plane there while it refueled when he was in the army. So let's make the entire airport Elvis themed. With the sun now above the horizon, it was time to hit the road. But first, we had to find somewhere to caffeinate those who choose coffee over my much more sensible diet of Red Bulls and Monster. Luckily, we spotted a coffee shop next to something that would wake me up. Choo-choo train. I like trains. With the people fueled up, it was time to do the same for the car. My brother, probably just needing 5 goddamn minutes alone, decided to drop us at a local museum complex while he went to find a servo. The Parkes Centre featured 4 entirely disparate museums: Elvis memorabilia, cars, old farm stuff, and a replica house from England. I'm really disappointed that we got here before the museum opened. I really wanted to learn all about Elvis. The city of Dubbo is only about an hour and a half from Parkes, a much shorter drive than on our 2 previous days, and even with that short of a drive, we would break our journey in the small town of Peak Hill. And when I say small town, I mean that the Wikipedia article specifically calls out the 5 merino sheep studs in the area by name before it can talk about any people from the area. It has a section on grain silos, and that's not even the only part of the page to talk about grain silos. It's small. That's what I'm saying. Other than the grain silos, Peak Hill is most famous for the Peak Hill gold mine experience. Peak what used to be a hill but is now a giant hole in the ground, more like. Despite the importance of grain silos and sheeps that gold is the reason there even is a Peak Hill. There was a mine here from 1889 until 1917, but what you see these days on the self-guided tour is much more recent. While it's pretty neat, it's also super depressing seeing just how much of the hill was moved for barely 6 tons of gold. I do have one complaint to make about visiting this historic tourist gold mine. They dug that pit out in 1996. How is 1996 historic? I feel like I'm coming across entirely negatively when talking about the places that we visited on this trip, and that's absolutely not what I'm going for. The Peak Hill gold mine is not the biggest or the best or even worth flying halfway around the world to visit. What it is, though, is an entirely new experience for me, and it absolutely is worth stopping for if you too choose to drive from Parkes to Dubbo.
Back into town, I was excited to see my first triple-trailer road train, and very surprised to learn that my brother is absolutely incapable of seeing a tat shop without walking in to look at the wares available. Growing up in Scotland, they were charity shops. Living in the US, they are thrift stores. But in Oz, we became intimately familiar with each and every salvo we passed, even if that salvo was a Vinnie's. I don't even know if I'm speaking English anymore.
He has had a hard life.
At the end of the street was the open-cut art gallery and museum and visitor centre. A strange mix of historical artifacts, incredibly sincere local art, tat, of course, postcards, and snacks. I was getting a little hungry, so I decided to purchase a small cake slice from the volunteer running the place. She very proudly took my $3 Australian before spending 5 minutes handwriting a receipt and filling out the store ledger. I would never have the heart to tell her that I took one bite of the cake slice and had to throw the rest away. On the road again with non-stop express service from Peak Hill to Dubbo Airport. Well, okay, maybe one small stop so that my mother could use a roadside dunny. I guess we just can't wait to get off the road again. The life we love is making music with our friends. Dubbo Airport is home to a Royal Flying Doctor Service base, which provides medical care to people truly out in the boonies, as well as the RFDS visitor experience, which is why we were there.
Digging post holes with a auger, and I went to dig a hole at the butt of a tree, and when I put the auger down, it hit a root and bucked back into an old fence. The wire caught my leg and twisted it around the auger where it broke at the ankle.
Some of these places that you go are very isolated and without the RFDS providing medical services and emergency care, it really is a lifeline to these people.
Here I am today, still going.
We'd be mugging an outline, really.
It must have saved many lives, and I'm sort of confident of saving mine.
I think I've been living in America too long, because my initial reaction watching the introduction movie was, you chose to live there, why should others subsidize your medical care?
That's how you fly, right?
Yeah. I like to think that who I am as a person is not defined by my initial gut reaction. I'm glad that I can step back and listen to that opinion and tell myself to shove it. I am glad that a service like the Flying Doctors exists. Sure, riding around the outback on a quad bike without a helmet is a stupid decision, but that does not mean you deserve to die or that your family deserve to lose you. And I'm glad that, at least in Australia, that it doesn't mean that you have to choose between receiving appropriate medical care or going bankrupt. The visitor experience was cool. After all, I like planes and socialized medicine. It ticked all the boxes for me. Somehow it was lunchtime again, and that meant it was time to try another mediocre Australian fast food chain. Today we would try Red Rooster, which gave very strong KFC vibes. I was very excited to find battered pineapple rings on the menu though. Deep-fried pineapple ring may have been the only fruit when I was a child in Scotland.
So we're now in downtown Dubbo, as though it somehow has a downtown. Anyway, we've had lunch and we're going to go visit the old jail.
The Old Dubbo Gaol was built in 1874, replacing an earlier courthouse lockup from 1947, and ran as a prison until 1966 when it closed, and all of the remaining prisoners were transferred to other towns. As nothing newer replaced it in Dubbo, I think that means it's technically the new Dubbo Gaol, that just happens to be old. We were visiting midweek during school term time, so the jail was running in a self-guided tour style. Apparently at weekends and during school holidays they'll have reenactors on site, which would definitely add something. I've been to historic jails and prisons throughout the world, from Kilmainham Jail in Dublin to Philadelphia's Eastern State Penitentiary, and even a few back home in Scotland. I felt a connection to the Stirling Old Town Jail while in Dubbo, as that's where I remember learning about people being shipped to Australia for simply stealing bread to feed their families. It is sensible for the jail in a small country town to be for both men and women. It's practical if nothing else, but also probably because of woke. Notably, there were 12 cells for men and only 2 for women, although the women's portion of the jail took up as much or more space due to the need to make them do all the laundry for the jail and the local hospital so that they could be kept nice and miserable until their sentence was over. I am trying with the commentary on this trip to keep things light-hearted, throw in a little witty bon mot here and there that entertains me, even if nobody else, but it's hard to do that when you're not only visiting a prison, but the site of several executions. It had been over 120 years since the gallows were used at Dubbo, but they're still a sobering sight. New South Wales only formally banned capital punishment in 1985, 1 year before I was born, although it hadn't actually executed anyone since 1939. The state of Georgia has executed more than 70 people since then. Not punished enough by spending the afternoon in jail, my brother had found that Dubbo had both a Salvo and a Vinnie's, and we would be visiting both in his search for the perfect bad coffee cup. I did enjoy the walk through town looking at the very different kinds of establishment that you might find on the main street of small-town USA. From retro computers to definitely not a knocking shop massage parlors, from an MP's electorate office to an adult novelty store, this town had everything. Even Wang's. Our motel this evening was the Pans, where it was just our 3 rooms and a busload of sweet old Australian ladies out on a trip. Clean, comfortable, well located. I had nothing to complain about other than the lack of earning Hilton points. Our day had finished kind of early, as this was not really much of a distance day. With a quick Google search, we found that Dubbo had an observatory that did viewings every night, and since the weather forecast was to be cloud-free, we decided this would be a good way to round out the day. And since my brother wanted a drink with dinner, we decided I would drive for the first time this trip.
So after a day in Dubbo, fun might be a strong word, but after a day, we have decided to come to the observatory and look at some stars. The moon is upside down. Very interesting. Lays eggs.
Just look through the eyepiece. Please don't grab the eyepiece or the telescope. It'll move, and it moves. It'll take another half hour for me to take up with it.
And if you're interested in joining us for more of this adventure, feel free to hit that subscribe button. While at the observatory, our astronomer, Peter Starr, pointed his telescope at Orion's nebula so he could take this picture for us. We'll fade to black on this.